Alright guys, welcome to VALORANT News. A hugely important day of the VALORANT World Championship. Yesterday, China finally get their revenge on Sentinels after the last few series that certainly went Sentinels' way. Coming into this tournament, Sentinels are expecting to certainly get out of their group and maybe make a deep run in the tournament and try and dethrone G2 and everybody else and maybe become the world champions. That has become far from the reality over the last couple of days. Sentinels bombing out of the tournament in the very last place. What does that mean for their future? Lots of reaction from the Sentinels players, where they need to go from here, and certainly what changes they might consider going into next season as well. Very much on Twitter, your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. We're going to dive straight into the games because yesterday we also had Edward Gaming, the reigning champions. They played Team Liquid, and Edward, they started out pretty well, but then Nats decided to just take over the game, right? So he had a pretty monstrous performance, and yeah, the Abyss in the end, Nats goes 27-7 for a +20, just took over the game on Edward's Gaming pick. And Edward Gaming were already at 1-0 in the series at this point. They had taken the Sunset in pretty dominant fashion, and yeah, it looked like Liquid could be seriously on the ropes. Edward, of course, reigning world champions. It's so difficult to maintain success year on year. I think the chances of Edward winning it again were, you know, basically zero. It wasn't far off anyway. But look, they gave it a good go. Of course, their team was not the same as last year with no Simon. They've had a bit of drama this season. I'd also say that Kang played a lot of Yoru recently, and I know that that is kind of the meta, right, the way that it's going, but he's just not very good on that agent, right? Compared to Jet, compared to, you know, even some of the other duelists he's done good things on. But Yoru, it's not been quite the case. So I think that Edward kind of forcing the issue on that has maybe come to backfire on them to some degree in recent months. So, like, Edward, they still made it to the World Championship, but they went from first last year to rock bottom, dead last this year. And this is how it went. Liquid took the 2-1 win. Nats went 60-37. He might just be the best player on the planet right now. Like, that is, you could definitely make that argument as it stands. Edward won 13-3 game 1. They dominated the defensive side of the Sunset. Nats game 1 was 6-13, and then he turned it around with a 27-7 Abyss and a 27-17 Bind, which did eventually go to a remarkable overtime that Liquid eventually won. So, like, this was a competitive series in the ends. Again, Kang played the Yoru on the map 3. He played the Yoru on the map 2. Game 1, he was on the Neon, and he goes 22-9. So, you know, just something for them to think about. Of course, next season the meta is going to be different, and the reality is now that it doesn't matter anymore anyway, because they are very much so out of the tournament. This is what he had to say. I think winning a championship, now he said this in Chinese, so this is translated, and there was some discussion on the quality of the translation in the replies. The discussion is maybe instead of the right people, it's more about, you know, the harmony and the unity of the team. So I don't think he's necessarily saying, oh, we need you, Simon, please come back. Like, I don't think he's exactly saying that. But he says winning a championship takes the right timing, the right place, the right people, requires putting in a lot of effort. Sometimes it might be just that one peak moment. That kind of feeling, you know, back then gives me the sense that maybe this year I didn't do as good as I did last year. In many ways, whether in-game self or mentality, haven't managed to put myself in best form. Going forward, I'll try my best to improve my form, my gameplay to a higher standard, he says. So yeah, they crash out, as I say. Very difficult to maintain a high level, but, you know, Kang real, the pressure must have been on him, right? I mean, he became the face of VALORANT in China last year after winning the World Championship. The pressure must have been on him to maintain that level, and it has proved difficult to accomplish. But as Sentinels say, with Edward crashing out of the tournament, well, it's official. There will be a new Champions winner this year, and, well, it ain't going to be Sentinels, because they then played their series against XLG, and look, did I have Sentinels winning this tournament? No. Even getting out of the groups I thought was going to be a big challenge because they lost to Giant X the other day. Paper X beats Giant X, of course, so it would be a rematch between Giant X and Sen if Sen were to beat XLG. We also know that Sentinels' records against Chinese teams recently has been particularly impressive, right? They've, you know, beat all the teams from China in recent times, but then XLG decided they were going to be the ones to get their revenge. And Sentinels, they took a pretty close competitive game on the Abyss. Then it was the Lotus, right? That was Sentinels' map pick, but in the end that goes against them, and the final map on the Haven, XLG, No Man and the boys, they get over the line.
Shallow though, he's got to commit towards a very deep hold in towards the arch.
There's a good chance he's just gonna get spammed.
Got a snake bite, he can slow down if he does get a kill.
What can he do? Paranoia's in, trying to slow down that roll, trying to buy them some time. Has to try and fight 30 HP. I think they might have just done this. XLG are sending Sentinels home!
What an insane performance. Catching Sen, blindsiding them. A punch to the gut for a North American giant.
Holy shit,
One of the
bro.
juggernauts here, bowing out very early. Again, Sentinels in these big games, they do tend to upswing under pressure. But today, the underdog has had
Damn, bro.
a lot of doubters about this side, and rightly so. But the level we saw on map 3 was under pressure. But today, the underdog has had its day. A lot of doubters about this side, and rightly so. But the level we saw on map 3 was...
Did I or did I not fucking call it?
So we know that Sentinels have talked a lot in recent months and weeks about their, let's say, mentality and the difficulties they have when they are in, let's say, pressure situations in actually executing. Because we know what this team is capable of, but they didn't get near their level this tournament, and they haven't even at the playoffs in the Americas. Yeah, they made it, but, you know, we understand that most of the Americas teams lately are just terrible. So, you know, Sentinels, when it mattered, when, they got to play NRG in the end, they did not deliver, did they? They've turned up to champs, and it's the same story as well. I mean, you know, you've turned up to groups. Sentinels will have looked at their group, that have seen Giant X and XLG, and that have thought, all right, like, we should be sound. We should be getting through second place bare minimum behind Paper X. They've lost to both of those teams, didn't even beat one of them. They won a map on them on Abyss, and it looked like after this, okay, maybe it's on, but then the Lotus happened. They lost it 13-11 on their map pick. And yeah, Zekken tried his best, but it just felt like when, you know, the pressure was on towards the end. I mean, look, they brought a nice little comeback here. They gave it a good go, and then they lost the final round when it mattered to get to overtime. Again, it's, you know, some of these things have crept in for Sentinels. And then again, when they went to the attacking side, they just lost a few too many defensive rounds towards the end of the half. Like, I think XLG deserve an awful lot of credit. Do I expect them to make an incredibly deep run of the tournament still? Let's be honest, probably not. I think this is more about Sentinels and them turning up to this tournament and not delivering anywhere near enough expectations, right? I mean, the rate bombing out with 9 kills, real tough one from him. And look, Gen.G, he was topping the numbers, right? You look at his rating, technically, okay, VLR rating you might say is a bit dodgy, but again, he was pretty much up there. But there will be big questions on maybe his leadership style or whatever's going on at Sentinels, because with the talent they've got, there's no way they should be this bad. But the reality is that when it mattered at the end of the season, that's exactly where they were. As they say, in the end, China got their revenge, and look, there's going to be big questions on where they go from here, because, yeah, fought to the end, but like the end was, what, a couple of matches into the tournament, right? Didn't even get to the decider game in the groups. Pretty embarrassing, it's got to be said, for Sentinels, and they will have to seriously think about what they do with their roster from here, because it was all looking so good a couple of months ago, but over the last few weeks, things fell away quite quickly, and that's especially painful when it matters the most. Zekken says, hate this feeling. Bang just says sorry, right? And Ethan Aston is in the reply saying, look, you had a great year, got a long career ahead of you. And yeah, I don't even know. If I'm Sentinels, I don't know what I do with this roster, to be honest. But I can't keep it together. Surely I can't. The only thing you could say, and I saw some discussion about this, is like, well, they need like a performance coach, right? They need like a mentality coach, because, I mean, Kaplan's made this point numerous times in interviews I've heard with him, that he knows that their peak level is very high, but they are unable to reach it. And when, let's say, when things start to go wrong, when they get punched in the mouth, they struggle to have the plan that they can execute on and, let's say, mentally reset as they, you know, and maybe you can criticize various players or individuals for this, or maybe that's Kaplan's job to figure that out himself, right? Maybe that's an argument too. So there has been talk about that. People say, oh, well, you know, they should just bring in a performance coach and keep the roster together. But I think when you bomb out in this way, it's, you know, those guys are not going to look at each other again with the same confidence that they once did. It's just how it goes. Kaplan says, that's it for our year. I'm very sad things ended. Eternally grateful for the support. Please understand, everyone gave so much this year, but, you know, clearly wasn't enough in the end. And that's the thing, right? You can work hard, but it doesn't matter if you don't deliver the result. So as John QT says, wasn't able to get my second international, tried our best, proud of everyone's hard work, made it to 4 internationals. And look, I think Sentinels, they did their own tweet. They said something like this: the only team in the world to be at every international tournament and every domestic upper finals, which is kind of funny because, like, it's true, I guess. It's kind of oddly specific, right? Every domestic upper finals, but also the only team in the world that matters in a couple of weeks is who actually lifts the trophy, and this year it's not going to be Sentinels. So No Man from XLG says, we beat Sentinels 2-1, GG's at Zelsis. Watching this guy play internationals is one of the reasons I don't cringe express my energy on stage. I think Zelsis is a tough one for him, right? Because look, he has been the vibes guy, whatever you want to say, for the organisation, for the roster. And I think Zelsis is a great player with a lot to add to a team. But the reality is his numbers, you know, not great. To be fair, not terrible compared to the rest of these guys, but he's, at least as of recording anyway, he's not tweeted anything out, so I don't know if, Zeltis is just kind of sitting there thinking, all right, well, you know, what next for me, what next for this team? Those are some very good questions. So it's all over for Sentinels, and I mean, it's kind of crazy, right? Edward Gaming, the first team to be eliminated from the tournament of the reigning champions, the second team to be eliminated was Sentinels, and as G2 says, it's still impossible to win champs, but of course G2, well, they're on the verge of elimination themselves. So where do Sentinels go? Intrigue your thoughts in the comments what they should do over the coming weeks with their roster, if anything at all. But, you know, a result like this, it's difficult to argue that those guys will be happy to run it back the next season. These are the other two deciding games. So Billy play RRQ, that's coming up in a few hours' time. Big game. I mean, I want to say RRQ are the slight favourites in that one. Could probably go either way, but I mean, look, XLG, at least they got a win on the board for the Chinese region. And then G2 DRG. This one I'm very much looking forward to. G2 are the heavy favourites for this series, but who knows? Maybe Demon 1 and DRG can pull off a serious upset. I'm sure Sentinels would like to see it. But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.